Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of A Typical Journey. This is the podcast where we explore inspiring stories of people who have changed their lives in unexpected ways. We have with us today Emmanuel Debuyck. He's the CEO and founder of Adwanted Group, a global leading advertising technology company. Thank you, Emmanuel, for being with us today. I'm sure that with 30 years of experience, up and downs, and all the awesome things you have accomplished in your life, we will learn a lot from your insights.
Thank you for having me, and I'm pleased to answer all your questions.
So we're gonna dive right into it with your
Yeah.
early life and education. Can you tell me the environment that you grew up in France?
Yes, I'm coming from a very regular family, I would say. My two parents were teachers, so I grew in an environment with a family of teachers from father to sons for maybe three generations. So I was probably raised to become a teacher myself. I don't know, but there was there was no one in my family who took the road of entrepreneurship at all. I made it all by myself as I developed my skills while I was studying. And in fact, I didn't want to be a teacher ever. I wanted to be a translator because I loved
A
English.
translator.
A translator. So I wanted to work in some place where you could translate from English to French. For some reason, I loved English.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I received a form from a business school, an application form, and I filled that application and I passed the exam. So I went to a business school, like out of the blue, literally. I was not prepared for that, and I really loved it. So that's how I started developing the skills around entrepreneurship, literally. Probably I was 19, 20.
So would you say that this is where your entrepreneurial spirit developed? It's not something that you aspired to when you were younger. You had no risk-taking tendencies or no idea at all of what it is to start a business.
No, I had absolutely no clue. There was no one in my family who was running a business, so I didn't know what it meant. Maybe that's the reason why I started, because I didn't know what it meant. So I didn't know about all the up and downs. Maybe that is part of my craziness to start with absolutely no idea of the good, but also no idea of the bad side of being an entrepreneur. And I just started.
So during your life in university, did you get hands-on experience and get to see the business sides of how things are run, maybe during internships, or how did you transition from university life to starting your first company?
Well, altogether, I think my studies took 4 or 5 years back then. It's a master. And during these 5 years, I had plenty of opportunities to meet entrepreneurs in my school. You know, they were having literally entrepreneur coming to the class and talk about their life as I'm doing right now. We were watching videos, we were watching movies about business. And at some point, there was a game, there was a competition within my university. And, you had to create a company with some classmates. And it was probably the early days of artificial intelligence, because that was 30 years ago. And in fact, each team had to come with new ideas about placing their product. And so we were all working on the same product. And our teacher had a software, and he would put all the criteria in the software. It took probably several months. And so each week he was giving us our performance, and obviously the performance of the other. And the goal was to be better than the other one. So I really liked that part, which was a game. It was literally a game. There was nothing to earn apart from trying to win a competition. And that's how I discovered that you had many criteria you could play on. It could be people, it could be product placement, all these things that you learn afterwards. And I really enjoyed that. I realized it was requiring probably a lot of common sense. And I thought that is what I had. I was not very good in math. I was not very good in science, but I thought I had pretty good common sense. And I found that was probably one of the great qualities in entrepreneurship, being able to see things as they are and try to develop. So I really enjoyed that time. And then, of course, there were internships. So I did a few internships. And then this is how I discovered the world of a real enterprise and see people evolving in that environment. And then that was probably near the end of my studies. I had a girlfriend whose father was running his own business, and I got to see the guy working every day, and he was enjoying what he was doing. And that probably inspired me as well.
But looking back, would you say that entrepreneurship skills are something that you were born with, even if you hadn't discovered it yet because of the environment that you weren't allowing that, or it's skills that you can actually learn as you grow?
Well, after what I just said, which is common sense, I believe a lot of people were born with common sense, and I hope for them. So
You
I
hope
think
so?
there is nothing you need to be born with to become an entrepreneur. I think many skills can be developed. The sense of observation. So I think that's one of the first things that is related to marketing, observing around you and try to solve issues. Every business is there to solve an issue at the beginning. Actually, when you do a pitch, the first slide would always be, tell us the problem you are trying to solve. And then that's how you explain your business. And so if you have common sense, you might find a way to solve someone else's problem. Sometimes it can be very easy. Sometimes it's very complicated, depending on your other skills. But I don't think you need to be born an entrepreneur. You can develop that.
That's really interesting to know, because a lot of people assume that it's not for everyone to be an entrepreneur and you have to have special predispositions or maybe put into that path at a very young age before you
And
can,
plenty of money.
even dream of succeeding.
A lot
And
of
plenty
people
of money, absolutely.
a lot
Yes.
of people believe you absolutely need plenty of money to start a business. And I think when you have plenty of money, I'm glad some people start with a lot of money, you just change the type of business you're doing. Because, for instance, if you want to launch a company that makes products, you need machines. And if you can't pay the machines, you're not going to start your business, because then you're not going to make any. When you don't have money, which was my case, because I'm not coming from a wealthy family, I was proposing services. So literally, the biggest cost of the company was me, the rent, and a computer. And from that, you can start a business with very little money, especially as you start at a young age where your needs are not very important. I was still living at my parents, so I didn't have to pay rent for myself. I had to pay rent for the company. And there are plenty of incubators, so you can start with a rent that is probably at the value of a few packs of cigarettes. And that's a good comparison I like to make, because I hear people saying, I don't have any money to launch a business. They drink a lot, they smoke a lot. I'm not a big drinker and I'm not smoking. And that money I saved was enough to start a business. So not complicated. You don't have to make sacrifices. You make sacrifices if you want to be in the delivery business. You need to buy a car. Well, of course, you'd rather be able to buy a car, or at least to rent one. So it fits with everyone's situation.
Okay, take us through the process of your first business. What motivated you to start a company at such a young age? Most people, even if they have in mind that one day they might want to start a business, right after school, at least you start to look for work and try to maybe work your way up the corporate ladder. But for you, it's a different story. So how did that happen?
I think it's multiple factors. First, I was really inspired as a student with the conferences I attended, and the entrepreneurs that were coming to the university explaining their path. For me, that was really inspiring. Also, from a very young age, I'm the eldest in my family, so I have a younger brother. I have cousins. I'm the eldest, and I've always been placed in the situation to be the chief. And so for me, that was kind of natural to be a leader. Not that I absolutely wanted to be a dictator. I liked the fact that people were following what I was saying. Sometimes they were listening, and that was a good exercise. I'm not a very authoritative person. I really make the difference between authority and leadership. So I think I had developed some kind of leadership. There was the scouts. I was a Boy Scout, and same thing. I was the leader of the team, and people were following me, but they were also counting on me, on my advice. I like that. I liked to lead, but I liked the fact that I was also useful for the ones. That was one of the reasons I started a company. Probably the second reason, even if I had some kind of leadership skills, I was probably not very self-confident. So I always needed to prove something to myself, probably to my parents as well. So I also probably started a company to show I was capable of doing something by myself. And
That's your
they
sweet
never.
revenge.
Well, I thought it was because, in fact, especially my father was really tough on me. He was trying always to push me. I thought that it was pushing me too hard because I was kind of lacking confidence. He was never pleased with what I was doing. I really enjoyed sports. So when I was winning a competition and I was proud of that, he would always tell me, you don't have to be proud. You just won a simple and easy competition. So it was never enough. And I remember that because 20 years later, when I was able to tell him, you didn't help me because you didn't grow my self-confidence. And his response was to say, see what you have become thanks to that. And so it's a complicated story to know who's responsible for what. So for some, it was a revenge. I've always seen that as a revenge. After all these years, that's not very important. I think I found my path.
How did you
Internship,
get the funds to get started?
I didn't need, in fact, much funds because back then, so 30 years ago, I started an advertising agency, and literally to start an advertising agency, you need to have good ideas. I was the one with good ideas because of my common sense. So that is cheap. You don't need to, what I mean is you don't need to spend the money to get that. That's part of what you do to your clients. And I needed a graphic designer to produce all the ideas into advertisements. And actually, I had a very good friend. Actually, my neighbor was a graphic designer. We had 1 year difference of age between us two. And so I came to see him. He was also coming out of school and he was planning to be a freelancer. I say, let's create a company together. His father was absolutely excited by the idea. And so here I am starting a company with someone with good ideas and a graphic designer as a partner. So you don't need to pay any salary because you're creating the company. And so then I went to my city. Back then I was in search of a business club. So I meet someone at the city council saying, yes, you can be part of this business club. And you know what? We have an incubator. So if you start your company with us, we are going to give you some place to start your business for a very, very cheap rent. It's irrelevant now, but that was the equivalent of, I don't know, $50 back then, because, you know, it was provided by the city. They had it was a former school, and they divided the school in plenty of very small office spaces, and they were trying to launch entrepreneurs. Because it was a city, they didn't expect to make any money out of it. They wanted to be proud, to be able to say to the crowd, you see, we've helped these guys start a company. We didn't put money in the company because as a city, we can't do that, but we lend them some space and they can start. And that's exactly what we did. So we didn't have to pay salary for ourselves. We were both very young, and I can't even remember whether I was living with my parents or with my girlfriend back then, but we didn't have much expenses. I was 22, 23. I had a very old car just to be able to drive from my place to parties at night and to work. But you know, you don't need fancy stuff. I was just starting my life, so I had plenty of dreams, but I didn't have much money. So literally, I started with the equivalent of, I don't know, $500. With that, we couldn't survive very long, but that was long enough to win the first client and to have an invoice. And the very first invoice was very small, but we were so proud. We celebrated that, and being able to celebrate every small step, because I remember we were starting in that incubator. So there are plenty of entrepreneurs next to us. And each time we were winning a campaign, each time we were winning a new client to make and produce their campaign, advertising campaign, we were celebrating. And one of our neighbors, he was probably 45, 50 years old back then. He was constantly coming to us saying, how come you're so successful? Because I'm struggling to launch my business. We were successful to have a check of 300 euros. And because he was older,
So it's all perspective.
Yes. And the guy was probably making much more money than us, but because we had no need and because we were celebrating, he was like nearly jealous. But we didn't want to disclose that the amount of our invoice was very small because we wanted to cultivate that success. And so when you go and see the next client, he sees someone successful in front of him, not someone saying, I only made 300 euros, I'm a loser. And I really think this is one of the critical areas for success. It's really about the mindset. If you, I think that was Henry Ford, but I'm not very sure of who said that at some point. And the quote was, if you think you are going to win, or if you think you are going to lose, you are right in both cases. And that's as simple as that. Put all your energy into your business. You probably are going to be more successful than someone who thinks every day that it's not working. It's too complicated. I'm going to die. The company is going to go bankrupt. If you think about that all the time, you're projecting something negative. The client sees something negative, and at the end, they don't trust you, so they don't sign your estimates, and you don't get the business. It probably looks simple, but when you start, you need to enjoy every step of it. Sometimes it's complicated. There are plenty of times where I was not able to pay the salary, but the salaries were not very important. So you find ways, and it's always trying to find a plan B. As long as, I never signed for a lease that was too expensive to pay, for instance. So makes things in the right order. I spoke with someone recently, and this person was advising entrepreneurs, and she would tell me, the issue we have right now because of Instagram and, all these things where you need to look successful, people will take rent that they cannot even afford. So it looks very nice, but at the end of the month, you cannot pay your rent, and therefore you cannot pay your salary, and you go bankrupt. So, that was the story for 15 years in the Silicon Valley. Every successful entrepreneur had started in his garage. Now everyone wants to start in WeWork, where the price is crazy expensive compared to a garage, compared to your brother's bedroom, because he's left the house. So it's putting things in the right order. You can develop the company when you make money, but don't spend it before you earned it.
It's all about priorities and mindsets.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I was saying common sense. Of course, it's nice to have a
Which is not
fantastic
that common.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Surprisingly, it's not that common.
I think a lot of people have a lot of common sense, but they are not able to forget about what they hear. So you always want to look better than you are. And so sometimes you do things because you're looking for the approbation of other ones. You should draw your path and stick to it rather than trying to be perfect in the eyes of other ones. And I think that's an issue. And that's more important today is because of the role of image. All the social networks. You always need to look nice, to have the nice watch, the nice shoes. Everything comes to the right time. So I also love fancy things. I thought it was more important to put the money where it could help me develop the business rather than trying to look nice. And I was talking to my stepson recently about that because when I started my career as an entrepreneur after a business school, usually you start in a pretty nice company, your salary is decent, and after 2 or 3 years, probably you get married, you have a nice car, you go to very nice vacation. I was still ramping up my company, so I could barely go to vacation. My car was nice, but not as nice as my friends. And so what? Because I was building. Yes, because you look too much.
That can be discouraging. How did you find the strength to still keep on going?
I told myself later I'll do better. I was always convinced that at some point the success would come. And I was like, well, they have a very nice vacation, fine. In 2 weeks, they will go back to work and will be the same. So I was not complaining. I was just trying to make it work. I was proud to run my own company because none of my friends was. So they were all pretending they had a fancy life. Everything was good. They had a fantastic job. I didn't believe that. And I found that it was much more rewarding for me to run my own business, to be the master of my future, the captain of my soul, someone would say. For me, that was the greatest motivation. And I didn't have the nice car. And I would tell myself I would buy a nice car one day and maybe even bigger one.
That's a really good thing to hear because, especially now, as you said, with social media, it's so hard not to compare yourself to other people. Meanwhile, you
Yeah,
don't even know if what they display is actually their reality. We've seen people that rent private jets just for
yeah,
pictures, for 30-minute pictures, and then they pretend that they're traveling in private jets.
yeah,
So, especially as young entrepreneurs starting out, it's going to be hard, and we will not always have the bling bling and the jet setting life that a lot of people are aspiring to. So it's really interesting to know
yeah,
that
exactly.
there's
I,
power
I I
in
think
taking
that
your
is
time and doing
something
things
really,
in the
really
right order.
important.
So we move forward to a few years after that. In 2012, you start Adwanted. What was the vision behind Adwanted Group?
I went bankrupt with the first company after 16 years. So I at that moment I was completely lost. First, I divorced, wouldn't see my kids, my business went bankrupt. I'm in the middle of a depression uh, because I lost my company. I had no more revenue, so that was a terrible moment, and I needed to do something because I had no unemployment, I had no subsidy, nothing. I had a family with kids, so I needed to find something. And I remember that I had a business plan in my desk that I had written 10 years prior. That was during the internet bubble. You know, everyone was writing business plan and they would raise money. At some point, I said, why shouldn't I do that? And I remember one of my shareholders back then of my advertising agency told me, you need to focus. And so I kept that business plan in a drawer of my desk for 10 years. And so the day the company goes bankrupt, I find that and I read the business plan. I said, wow, it's 10 years old, but it's not so bad. So maybe I should talk about this business plan to some other people. The idea was to create what we call an ad exchange, a digital place where you could buy and sell advertising. So, 2012, that was just a few years after Uber or Booking.com. You know, you want to book a hotel, you go on internet and you can book a hotel. So you need hotels and you need clients. My idea was to do the same for the advertising industry. People are trying to buy advertising. It's complicated. And the other side, you have people trying to sell advertising. So I said, let's put these guys together on a website. That was the original idea. And I spoke to some of my friends because I was still in a business club. So I had some friends who were entrepreneurs, and I told them, "You see, this is the idea I have." Because I felt so bad after the bankruptcy, I wanted their feedback, and one of them, and actually was the CEO of KPMG in the north of France. And the guy told me, this is a brilliant idea. You should absolutely do that. I really like that. So he asked me to come at KPMG. We work on a more granular business plan. And then that's how I started. I needed something to present to some other friends because of the bankruptcy, I was completely cashless. I had absolutely no more money. And so I had to find a way to restart another business with a bigger ambition, but with the same kind of situation I had 15 years before, meaning I had no money to put in that company or nearly no money. I had a little bit, but it was still so little that I needed some help outside. And that's how I started meeting investors to present the business plan with the help of KPMG. KPMG was a very good label. They put a stamp literally on your business plan saying, yes, we think it's a good idea. And at least people listen to you and they don't care too much about your bankruptcy. Well, not too much. That was not the case for bankers because that's the thing. I started a second company. I thought I had a very good experience because of 15 years of the first company that was doing pretty well. Interestingly, in France, they look at my experience of someone who bankrupted a company. So instead of going to bankers thinking I have more experience, so it should be easier, they would see me as a guy who failed, and so I was not trustworthy. So no bank, absolutely no bank, wanted to help me. That was the beginning of the second company, Adwanted, which I still run now. And so I went and see some of my friends. I told them this is what I'm planning to do, and I'm trying to raise money. And some of my friends just made checks, but small checks, 3,000 euros, 10,000 euros. And I started the company with, I don't know, maybe 20,000 euros. And that was pretty much it. And from that, I grew. I worked on my business plan to make it look even nicer. And then I was able to raise 70,000 euros because I needed more workforce, literally. I didn't need only a graphic designer this time. I also needed coders. I needed customer service. I started with a very small team. As far as I remember, we were 4. I went to my lawyer because he was the owner of some office space. He said, you can rent one of the office space. We can arrange on the payment. So it was not too tough on me to get the payments. And that's how I started Adwanted in Lille, 2012, 4 person. And 30,000 euros was the amount I started with. And that would give me probably 4 to 5 months of visibility. And after that, if you don't find an idea or solution to make money, you're out. So the goal is to try and develop, either to find clients or to find other sources of funds. So some other investors. So you need to go and look for investors all the time. That's what I did for the first years. I was trying to be the salesman of the company, meaning I was looking for clients, but I was also looking at the same time for investors because I knew that we needed to put money into the company to be able to pay for the salespeople to go for the clients. So it's a virtuous circle, but you need to put the money in first before it comes in the bank for the company.
Prior to starting Adwanted, I'm going to go back a little bit to the bankruptcy story. You start a company really young at 23 years old. You run the company for 15 years. It was successful. And all of a sudden, bankruptcy, divorce, you are in a dark place. How do you get the confidence and the strength to say, you know what, I'm just going to start another company? How did you not feel that maybe if I crashed after 15 years and now I'm completely at my low, maybe I should just go and find a job?
In fact, probably one of the reasons is to be pragmatic enough to look at the reasons of the bankruptcy. And I was in that situation to be able to explain every step of the bankruptcy. So it's not like discover I was completely stupid for something and I should never have done that. That was not the case. I was able to see that my company was growing fast. And because the company was growing fast, it needed a lot of cash. I didn't have the cash. So I wanted to have another partner in the company, an investor, an associate, you call it whatever you want. So I'm looking for someone who would acquire a part of the company and put cash in so that would give me the means to develop the business. Then I made a few acquisition. I bought some companies. The bank would trust me. They say, wow, what you're doing is great. So we're going to lend you some money. And I'm buying one company, the second one, the third one. The third one was much bigger, but growing. So same thing again. I need cash all the time because when you grow a business, usually you spend the money before it gets in. To make it simple, you hire salespeople. You need to pay these salespeople. And unless you're selling, candies, you don't have the money immediately back in the advertising world. You're going to see the clients. The project take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, and then you get paid. So that's why you constantly need cash because you see a lot of clients. They are very happy, but between the moment you see the client and the moment they pay, you have to pay the salary of your own employees, the salespeople, the graphic designers, and the rent. And that's why the more you grow, the more cash you need. And I was in that situation. My company was growing rapidly. It was getting bigger and bigger. And then the financial crisis happens because we are in 2009, 2010. And when there is this big financial crisis, everyone is afraid. And one of the first reaction for a company when there is a crisis, they cut the costs. And one of the easiest costs to cut is advertising. Actually, you want to keep your rent or your building, so you pay your rent. You want to keep your employees, so you keep your employees. But a lot of people think they can do without advertising, so they will cut their budgets. And as I was just explaining, it was between 1 and 5 months to get paid from the clients. But if there's a financial crisis and the clients withdraw their project or they try to delay the payment, then this amount that you need to put, it's called the working capital. The amount of money you have to put in the business before you get the cash in gets even bigger. And so that happens at large scale. At that time, I run 3 different advertising agencies in France. So I have 3 times the same problems. The company is getting bigger. So with the financial crisis, a lot of the clients decide not to pay anymore, to delay, or to stop completely their projects. And I need even more cash to compensate that. So I eventually find someone who agrees to become my partner and negotiates to get 50% of the company. I was not trying to make any money myself. I was trying to find someone who could put cash in the company so we could survive. Of course, before going to bankruptcy, you work with some kind of attorney, some lawyers. It's a complex part. I had to let go a few people because we were too many, and there was not enough projects then. Just in a matter of a few months, you're in a fast-growing company to a company that becomes completely flat or even decreased because the projects are out. People say, no, I'm not doing advertising. My clients are not paying, so I'm not advertising. People have many good or bad reasons to stop advertising, and you're there as an advertiser or as an agency trying to find a solution. And so I found this guy, and he said, okay, I'm going to put the cash into the company. I'm going to have 2 payments. I remember that very well. So I was very pleased when I got the first payment, and the second payment never went through. The guy lied to everyone because he was himself in big trouble and he was going bankrupt. And so I'm with a partner who has 50% of the shares, but owes the company a large chunk of money that would help me survive. And so I'm trying to do as much things as possible, but it takes longer than expected. You know, there is some gossip. Sometimes people don't understand the bankruptcy process because you just don't stop on day one. You go for a judge. We try to find solution. We put in place the solution. And during all that time, you're in bankruptcy. In the US, it's called Chapter 11, when everyone is trying to find a solution to save the company. And if we don't, that is when there is the real bankruptcy, when the company stops because there is no cash. So I went to all that process for 18 months, trying to solve the issues and getting new clients. It was getting pretty good. But some people didn't like the fact we were surviving because it's a very competitive environment. And we heard that some of our competitors called our clients saying, you know, this company is going to bankrupt. And so I was receiving calls from my clients, and they were saying, is that true you're under Chapter 11? I said, yes, but we're nearly out of that. It's getting pretty good, actually. We're doing well. Well, but in that case, I'm not very sure I should do my project right now. And in fact, it's worsened the situation. And that's how I had to stop literally the company. One day I called the judge, I said, I'm sorry, I'm done. I can't find any other solution because of these new clients trying to stop their projects, there is nothing I can do.
What is the biggest lesson you learned through all this process?
Well, first, I was explaining just before that I was trying to find the solution, the reason why the company went bankrupt. So one of the main reason was cash. Cash is key. You need to be very aware of what your company is generating or expanding. Because if you don't control that, you could have a nice growing business and go bankrupt. Because if you can't pay your suppliers, if you can't pay your invoices, at some point people don't trust you and they don't deliver you of what you have ordered yourself. So it's getting very complicated. I realized that, and that's exactly what I did with Adwanted, because with my advertising agency, it took me, I waited, I don't know, 12, 13 years before I accepted to have a partner in the company. So with Adwanted, I started immediately with partners, and I think it was good. Actually, when I started my advertising agency, there was this neighbor who was a partner, but he really loved everything I was doing. And that is very dangerous. You need to be challenged. And so I was with, a friend of mine. And each time I was telling we should do that, say, oh, yes, that's a brilliant idea. Every day. He would tell me that 10 days, 10 times a day. To the extent, at some points, I said, I can't be always right. That's not possible. And I needed someone who could challenge my idea, say, no, maybe you shouldn't do that. You need that. And that's why I
It takes a
created
lot
a
of
book.
self-awareness to realize
It's,
that, because a lot of people actually love to be showered with compliments all day long,
yes,
and they will be flattered and, keep around people who just do that all day.
yeah, and that's part that's part for me of what I call the common sense. You can't possibly be right all the time. You make mistakes. And I was telling my partner back then, the guy I created the company with, I want to play ping pong with you, but if each time I send the ball, I win, it's not even fun for me. I want you to send the ball back on the other side. So I have to run, I have to train. I need to compete with myself. I need to compete with you. That is part of the process. I think it's the Japanese called it the constant improving scheme. If each time you do something, people are clapping, saying it's good, you end up by being the last one because you don't renew yourself, you don't find new ideas, you don't try to improve. And I think it's the same for people. At a very young age, everyone tells you you're a genius. Probably when you're grown up, you're terrible because everyone has told you you're a genius and you never question that. And so you never try
And you
to do
never
better.
try to improve.
Absolutely. So that's part of the education I received. I was in the opposite. My father never found I was a genius, even when I was very proud of myself. So I had constantly to fight to make him proud. And probably this is part of my life as an entrepreneur. I'm never satisfied with myself. I try, of course, I'm glad when we receive awards. I like to be in the press, but that lasts couple of hours, literally. One of the biggest disappointments as an industry leader, as an entrepreneur, you don't have anyone telling you you're doing great. When you play tennis, when you practice a sport, you know when you win. You have to race against the watch. If you play tennis, you have to win your game. When you're an entrepreneur, no one ever tells you, "Oh, this is great." Once or twice a year, you get an award. So that's very nice. That makes you proud of yourself. But in fact, you constantly need to improve. You have the accounts. So it's like a jury at the end of the year. Someone gives you all the paperwork with the accounts of the company. Sometimes people will tell you, wow, not so bad. And some people will tell you, we expect more from you. It's like I was in school. You get A minus, and someone says you could have aimed at A plus. So that's part of the mindset, and that's why I'm trying to practice sports. So sometimes I need the good feedback. I need to win. And when you run a company, you cannot win every day. If you play tennis, you can win every day. So that's my disappointment. Trying to find the motivation, but that's how you probably build your strength and your resilience. That is part of the story. I don't know any entrepreneur ever who's constantly happy and win. That doesn't exist. We all go through roller coasters. You have very good years, very bad years. You have very good days, very bad days. That's part of life. And when I'm down, when I faced very bad days, I'm always thinking I'm probably not the only one living bad days. So this shall pass. I need to work on that. That's when you need to have friends to push you back up and say, "Don't worry, this is today. Tomorrow is another day, and maybe it gets better." And that's part of the motivation. So you need to find your mentors. You need to find the people around you that believe that even when you fail, this is part of the experience.
Since founding Adwanted in 2012 to now, the company has grown exponentially. You are now in key markets like the US, you are in UK, you are in France and all that. At this point, you must actually have something to be proud of. What are the key accomplishments that when you look back, you are really proud of yourself? You can't tell me that there's nothing there.
That's a very good question. I think that also relates to question I get from some of my friends asking me why I'm still running my business, and it relates to what you were just saying, because my ambition is big, and I think there is always better than you can do, and I really believe that if I'm 100% happy of what I've done, then maybe I should retire, and that's not my mindset. So I I'm always amazed and surprised when I see people and they praise me for what I've done and the success of Adwanted, because I don't really see it as a success because I'm constantly looking at the following year. I'm speaking with people very happy, very proud of what we have done. And maybe the following day, I'm speaking with investors and they would tell me, that's good, but here we were expecting more. So you don't have much time to enjoy. It's already like, oh, now let's go to that part. Like right now, the company is doing really well, but we are trying to raise funds and it's complicated to raise funds. So I have plenty of reason to be proud, but plenty of reason also to keep the focus and try to find a solution to get the funding I need for the next round of the company. And that's part of the life of an entrepreneur. I think if I were too proud of myself, maybe I would become more painful to people I work with, because I believe the modesty is part of the quality of the relationship. I never spend any second with people telling how proud I am of what I've done. I spend a lot of time trying to tell people, let's go to that next step because it's good for the company. And if it's good for the company, it's going to be good for you. And at the end, it will be good for me also. So it's like a virtuous circle, but we have time of celebration. It should never last too long because then you fall asleep, you lose the focus, you lose the attention, and that's when a competitor comes in and takes it off.
But last year, you won Entrepreneur of the Year at Le Grand Prix des Agences de l'Année, which is a major awards in the advertising world. What were your feelings on stage to receive that award?
That one made me proud because part of the life of an entrepreneur is, when you're not a public figure, is to work, in the shade, literally. No one knows me. Some people of my industry know me for sure, but I'm not a very public person. First, because I'm the CEO of different businesses that have been there for a very long time. So the people in front of the clients are not me. I have the CEOs in countries, I have country managers, I have project managers. So plenty of people have opportunity to see the client and the big partners, not me. So not many people know me. So when I get this kind of award, there is some advertising around that, and it's better for the reputation. So I was glad to get it, and that's one of the rare occasions where my parents told me they were proud of what I was doing because they could see, oh, that we understand.
Still today,
Yeah, I believe so. And I think it's part
it
of
has
my.
its good parts. It pushes you to keep wanting to be, amazing and wanting to do more and more. But it's important too at some point to be able to relax and stop and say, I'm proud of what I've done so far.
That's my issue. That's my issue, and that relates to mental health, literally. I think on one of my profiles, maybe on Instagram, it says work hard, play hard. I like to work really hard. I'm not always very good at playing hard. So, or sometimes I don't do it really well. So I'm trying to keep the right balance. And I think that's also one of the reasons now I moved back to France to try and find more ways to relax, because being abroad, and you know that, you're under constant pressure. Your brain is constantly under fire just because you are speaking another language. Just that is consuming a lot of energy. And because you're running a business in a very dense and energetic city, you need to be on the same pace, on the same mood. I'm trying now to find ways to compensate the very high energy I'm putting in what I'm doing with extremely relaxful moments. And it becomes very complicated. I I'm very proud of one thing. I have many friends uh, who tend to be depressed because of the complexity of their life as entrepreneurs. So first, they would sell their business. I really love what I do, so that keeps me completely in shape, in great form to do things. And I've also seen friends going to addictions. I don't consume any kind of drug. I don't drink alcohol other than going to parties with friends, but I don't know many people who have ever seen me drunk, ever, because I like to have a drink with friends, but I don't want the alcohol to be the reason why I would feel relaxed. So I prefer to go and swim, go on my motorbike, fixing cars, because that's really something relaxing to me. And that's what I need to find to keep the pace. So everyone has to find their own recipe. People would love to read. I don't, because after 2 lines, I just fall asleep, and that doesn't relax as much as something that gives you
Have you tried
enjoyment.
audiobooks?
Yes, I'm trying so many things. I haven't found the perfect thing. So I still am working on myself to try and improve. I know sometimes I can be a pain to my wife because I'm under stress, and I try to keep things for myself, but she sees that it's not the case. So it's fine. It's constantly trying to find the right balance, because, and I also live that with my parents. My parents are extremely stressed, and they are teachers. So obviously, when you're an entrepreneur, a level of stress is much bigger. So the capacity of accepting the stress is also much bigger. Probably with 5% of my stress, people will want to commit suicide. You know, it's experience. If you're facing complicated
How are you
things,
managing that?
I think it's really experience. For instance, when you go to bankruptcy, this is terrible. You have lawyers, attorneys, everyone's on your back saying how bad you are. And then you go to a divorce and you don't see your kids. That was terrible. And from that, working with lawyers, I didn't care. And so now I'm very fine if I need to see a lawyer, because I went through that, and I went to the worst part, which was I was not able to see my kids. That was a very big stress I could do nothing about. So relatively, I found that the stuff I was living 2 or 3 weeks before with lawyers, judges, and everything was that's fine. I don't care as long as I see my kids. It's kind of a ladder. Each time you go on one step, you find that the other one, it's like a kid jumping in the water for the first time. You're completely scared, but then you survive. And then next time you jump, and the time after that you dive, and you're getting good. That's exactly the same for life. The more you face situations that are complicated, the better you become, because you know by experience. I know some people who face extremely stressful situation much more than I do. Everyone has his own ladder of stress and complexity, and everyone try to. I'm trying to build my own resilience and to have the right tools, like as I was just saying, like never using drugs, anxiolytics, or alcohol when something is going wrong, because that doesn't help. At the end, it just makes you worse. So that's part of the routine.
Can you tell me what is the importance of family right now for you, being reconnected with your kids and happy wife, happy life? You like to say that phrase. What is the importance of being surrounded with connections and family and friends?
I think you need the support. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to leave things that are complicated, but you need to have the support around yourself. I remember I had a girlfriend. That was after my divorce, and I was launching Adwanted. I was not making money as much as she expected. And probably 6 months into Adwanted, she said, "You know what? You should stop that new business. It's not working, and you should try and find a job." And hopefully, I decided to continue my path. I quit her, and 12 years later, Adwanted is much bigger, and I'm much more happy. So this is exactly the kind of situation you don't want to be in. You know, with people that don't believe that what you're doing works or is a success. You need to you need to work on that. If you really believe you are going to be successful, you need to be able to avoid listening to the naysayers, all the people that you cross all the time saying, yeah, you shouldn't do that, it's not going to work. Well, let me try and then we'll talk about that after. So that has always been my principle. So my family is the support.
Any final words you would like to share with our listeners?
It's an experience. It's a life experience to create a business. Set your goals and try to cut your goals in small steps, one step at a time. If you want to go too fast, the failure is going to be the response. But if you build step by step, brick after brick, your wall is going to become a cathedral. That's really how I see things. Take your time. For some people, it goes very fast, and then they have a stroke, they drink, they're not happy. You don't need to compare yourself to others. Just take your time, build things as much as you can, and enjoy it.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Emmanuel. Your story is a testament of resilience, passion, and the importance of continual learning and adaptation. We wish you all the best for Adwanted. We are out of time here, but we will have you back for sure because this is just a glimpse of your whole atypical journey. So we will have you back for sure. And we thank you so much and good luck with all the things you do.
Count on me. I will be pleased to be back.
Thank you everyone for tuning into this episode of Atypical Journey. This is your host Namkata. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories and follow us on all of our platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts.